So at this point, most of the Beis HaMikdash has been built. Now we're going to the final wrap up, the final elements of building the Beis HaMikdash. V'yishlach HaMelech Shlomo v'ikach es Hiram mitzur. So Shlomo sent for this person named Hiram from a place called Sur. Sur was not part of Israel. There's nations of Sur. Yeah. And that's where he wanted to bring this person Hiram from. So who was Hiram? Ben Isha Almanahu, Mimate Naphtali. He was the son of a widow from the tribe of Naphtali. Vaviv Ish Tsuri. His father was from Tsur. Chorish Nechoshes, Vimale Esachokma, Vesadvuna, Vesadas, Lesos Kol Malacha Ben Nechoshes, Vyavo Elamelech, Shlomo, Vyas Es Kol Malachto. So who is this person, Hiram? His mother was from Naphtali. His father was from Tsur. And so some say he was a ger. Some say he's from Sheva Dan also. Naphtali Dan. Maybe he wasn't a ger, maybe he just lived there. But he was from Naphtali, maybe from Dan also, and was perhaps even a ger from Tsur. So that's the person Shlomo wanted to do the wrap-up work on the Beis HaMikdash. It's a very important work that comes next. So that's interesting already. And Sheva Dan and Sheva Naphtali, they're the tribes of the Shvachot. Mm-hmm. They're not from the Imahot, right? So they're not from the elite. Okay, Sheva Dan is considered like the somehow the least elite of all the tribes. Okay. Yeah. Oh, so that's where he was from. So it wasn't from Yehuda, like Yehuda's elite, you know? And okay. And he had Chokmah and Tvuna and Dat, Lasot Kol Malacha Ben Nechoshes. And his main thing was Nechoshes. Okay, good. Because Nechoshes is I'm not sure if it's brass or copper. I think it's brass. Brass, yeah. So his expertise was brass. And that's what he wanted him for. It seems like his father was also a craftsman, and the father did also things before. He did all the other things too. But anyway, he wanted this. His father was also named Hiram, and he learned from him. And he was very good at making all this brass stuff. That was his expertise. And he did it with a deep wisdom. It says Chokmah, Utvuna, V'das. It's the same way it describes the Batzalel who made the Mishkan. Same thing. Okay, so this is going to be deep stuff. Yavo Melech Shlomo Vyas es Kol Malachto. V'yatzar Shnei Amudim Nechoshes Shmona Esrei Ama Komas Ha'amud Echad V'chut Shteim Esrei Ama Yisov Es Ha'amud Hasheni. So he made these two pillars out of brass, and they were 18 amos high, very high. And the circumference around it was 12 amos, very, very wide as well. Uh-huh. Massive pillars. Yeah. And the second one was the same. The two were the same. Ushtei kosaros asal says arosh hamodim, and there were two kotarots. I think there's a word for that in English. What, like these round things you put at the top of a pillar? Capitals. Okay, that's good. Kosaros. So there were two capitals that he put on the heads of the pillars. Mutzak nechoshes. They were also from molded brass. Chamesh amos komas koseres. Hachas v'chamesh amos komas koseres hashenis. So each of them, there were 5 more amos high. That's really big. I wanted to bring a picture. I didn't have a chance to copy it. Beautiful picture. You could see the pictures. They're red and with it's beautiful stuff. Okay. So vachim masei tzvacha gdili masei shashros kosaros asher rosh amudim shiva koseros achas v'shiva koseros hashenis. So they had these chains around them, decorative chains all around them. V'yas es amudim u'shnei turim Saviv al Svacha Achas Sos Esekosaros Sharosh Harimonim Kenasar Lekoseros Hashanis. They had all these ridges, and they had also these little rimonim, pomegranates, figures all around them also. It looks very beautiful in the picture. I got to bring you the picture, Mitzvah Hashem. Kenasar Lekoseros Hashanis. Kosaros Asher al Rosh Hamudim Maseh Shushan Ulam Arba Amos. Also, they had on top, they had like a rose figure. Maisa Shushan. Shushan is a rose. Okay. Kosaros al Shnei Hamudim Gamimal Milumas Habetin Asher La'ever Tzvachav Rimonim Masayim Turim Saviv al Koseres Hashanis. Okay, this again is describing all the decorations are there. V'kames Hamudim Le'ulam Ehechel V'yakemes Hamud Hayamani V'yikra Eshemo Yachin. So where did he put these pillars? He put them in the entrance to the Heichel, in a place called the Ulam. So they were standing there by the entrance of to the Heichel, to the sanctuary. In other words, there was the Kodesh before the Kodesh. That was the 40 amos, and then the Kodesh Kodashim was the other 20 amos. So in the entrance, that's called the Ulam, and that's you had these two pillars. And they had names. So the one on the right was called Yachin, V'yakem Esamud Asmoli, and then they put up they stood up the one on the right, they called that Yachin, and they put up the one on the left, and it was called V'yukrishimo Boaz. It's called Boaz. These two pillars had names. So it gets more and more mysterious and interesting, right? And the top of the mudim there was this rose work. It looked like a rose. There was a form of a rose. That was the completion of the work of the amudim. Okay, so now I want to talk about these amudim. So this is very interesting. So what you see about these two pillars is that they weren't serving any purpose. First of all, it's strange. They weren't holding anything up. They were just pillars for nothing. Right? Decorative. Like, what is that? And number two, they had names. It's like, so when did you give names to pillars? Like they were like, what were the names to them? One's called Yachin, was called Boaz. Okay. Now,
was David's grandfather.
That's also true. Okay, good. That's a good point.
Yachin
is the right one, and Boaz is the left one.
Yachin is a feature in the history of Jewish history.
No. I don't think that's the idea here. I want to tell you more about these things. Oh wait. Yeah. Okay, that's that. And now let me tell you more about this. This is very interesting. So you see that they're not really serving a purpose. And they have a name, and they're very, very big. They're very, very. If you look into the base of Mikdash, like so you were standing on, from a distance looking, this would be outstanding. These big pillars, really big pillars, standing in front of the entrance. Okay, now look at this later. Now later you get to much later in the Sefer, and it describes in Per Kaf Hey. I'll read this to you. Melachim base Per Kaf Hey describes the destruction of the base of Mikdash. And this is Yirmiyahu who wrote Sefer Melachim and also wrote Lamentations, and lived in times of the destruction. So here he's describing the destruction. It says, "V'yisruf es beis Hashem, v'es beis Hamelech, v'es kol batei Yerushalayim, v'es kol beis gadol srapesh." He destroyed with fire. They destroyed with fire. This was the Babylonians. They destroyed with fire the base of Mikdash and the house of the king, also the king's house, and all the house of Yerushalayim, and this great house they burnt up with fire. Okay, and that's what it says. And then it doesn't talk too much about what happened in the process of what was destroyed in the base of Mikdash. And then it goes on, and it says, it goes on a pasuk later, "V'samudei hanachoshes, asher beis Hashem, v'samonkonos v'siyam hanachoshes, asher beis Hashem, shibru kasdim, v'yasu es nechushtam bavela." And the two pillars of brass, which were in the house of Hashem, also the brass mekonot were the places where they washed from. We'll get to that. And also the Yam Shal Shlomo, we'll get to that also, this place where they kept water. There were also all the brass features which are in the Chatzer, in the courtyard. So they broke them. They brought them the Qasim, the Babylonians, and they took away the copper to Babel. Vesasirod, Vesyam, and it goes on and talks further, and it says Hamudim Shnaim. There were two Hamudim. And it says Shmona Esra Ama Komas Amud Echet. The height of each Amud, a pillar, was 18 Amud. The Koseres Alav Nechoshes Komas Koseres, and then it describes the Koteret. The what did you call it again?
Capital.
The capital, also, and the Rimonim that were on it and the Rimonim, and that was all Nechoshes, all made of brass. Okay, and so it describes all these things that we know about. It describes them in detail. And what happened to the whole Beis Hamikdash? No description. What happens to these two pillars? Describes in depth. So why is that? What's that? Why is Yirmiyahu especially lamenting over the destruction of these two pillars? Right? Inside was gold. Inside was the Kodesh Kodashim. Inside was the Kodesh, was the menorah and the incense and the Aharon Kodesh. Everything was in there, and he didn't talk about that. He just talks about the two pillars outside. So what does that mean, right? Okay, so this is the parish I saw. So actually, before I get to parish, let me first read from the Malbim. The Malbim says Kabbalah stuff. Okay, that's first. So that's very interesting. So obviously you're going to get to Kabbalah stuff because it's not part of the Mishkan. It's something decorative. It's what is it doing? It's symbolic, right? Okay, symbolic is the right word. Not decorative, symbolic. All right, let me find this. Oh. So he says, I can't really explain all this. He goes really deep. He gets really Kabbalistic over here. But we'll hear it a little bit just to get the idea. Okay? So he says, he says the two pillars, they hint at the two types of Hanhaga, the guidance which Hashem guides his world with, which he runs his world with. Hanhaga ataviyas hakavua mesheshis yemei breishis limicheses tamid liyad smol nikaboas. So he says the natural system and guidance which the world follows. So that's represented by the left. That's always the left side. The side, and that's Boaz, Nikra Boaz. Because the power of Hashem, the strength of Hashem, is fixed in the laws of nature. It never changes. It's something very powerful. The power of gravity, the power of all the different things that are happening in the world. Gravity is the weak force. The strong force is what binds the atoms, binds the molecules. And there's all these forces of physics and all the strength of the world. So that's very fixed. Everything is fixed in nature. There's this whole system going. There's great power inside the system. Fanhaga hanesis shias Hashem lefi tzorach fi chanas achtonim kar yachin ki zos yachin tamid lefi ratzon hamaschadesh fi mais achtonim b'al bechira. So the other one is called yachin, and that represents the force of miracles, which Hashem guides the world with also. There's a miraculous hanhaga. Hanhaga means leadership, spiritual leadership that Hashem leads the world with, and that's in the world of miracles, and that's called yachin, because this is always prepared according to the will that's renewed inside from human beings. People make choices that there's this potential for miracles to come down. So when people prepare themselves, or this is prepared to come down, when people conduct themselves in a certain way, mitzvot, good choices, good midot, all that kind of thing, serving Hashem, dveikut, ukavar biar halokim. Okay, and then he goes and says what the Kabbalah, that's the Malbim's summing up. So Yachin represents to the Hanahaga Hanisit, he calls it. The supernatural guidance which is behind the world. It comes out sometimes when people are ready to receive it. And the one on the left, that's called Boaz. That's the power of nature which is fixed in the world. Okay. Ukvar biaru Elokim. He says, he already explained the Elokim. He calls the Kabbalists Elokim, the divine individuals, ones who understood the divine secrets. Kihani Trey Samche Kashut. These two Sam pillars, these decorative pillars, Hemishnei Yerechim Netzik Vahod. It represents the two legs. The body, it describes the 10 sfirot, and the two legs are called Netzach Vahod. And Himini Mashpia Vasmoli Mikabel. So the right one is the Mashpia, is the one that influences, and the left one is the one that receives. Fame Umas Yisod Malchus. And it also happens on another level. See, I can't explain this. This is Kabbalah stuff, but Kabbalists, they have this way of talking. It says also it corresponds to Yisod and Malchus. So you're going down. So Yisod is foundation, bonding, and Malchus is the kingdom, right? So Shanahagas Anisis Mushba Yisod Olam Shnikr Chai Olamim. So he says the Anhaga Anisis, the miraculous conducting of the world, that comes out. That's Mushba. It's brought about from the foundation of the world, which is called Chai Olamim, the life of the world. Yud Ches, and they were Yud Ches Amos High, right? Yud Ches is 18. Chai Olamim. What? Yeah. So Zeh Amar Shmona Esrei Amar Komas Amar Echad. Ramza B'Koma Ki Yesod Moshech Mitferes Yisrael Mitferes Gufa Shem Remza Mitferes Yisrael Cholis etc. Okay, and it's a remez to the. Okay, let me point out here what I'm seeing here is that he says this comes from Klal Yisrael. Klal Yisrael are the ones who create the bond. I'm saying my own understanding here, but Klal Yisrael they're the bonders of the world. We bond with each other. We have obvious Yisrael. We have this concept of being one, and we reflect. We understand. We say Shema Yisrael twice a day. We bring down the oneness of the world, and through us comes down that's the miraculous aspect of Hashem's guidance, comes down through us, and it affects the rest of the world, which is in the natural world, through us. So the miraculous comes down through the bonding, unified force of Am Yisrael, and that comes down into the Nest of Nations, affects all the world of nature as well. So I'm touching on what he says in the Kabbalah stuff. So what you see here is you have the two pillars representing how Hashem runs the world. The right one is called Yachin. It represents the world of miracles, above nature. And the left one is called Boaz. That's the world of nature. And the supernatural Hanhagas come down into the world when the people are prepared for it. And then that goes down and affects all of nature as well. And there's a brachim, there's blessing in nature, and everything works out through this whole process. So here you have like a sort of an emblem of how the world works now. Klal Yisrael, the Jewish people, are at the center of bringing down blessing into the world through the conduct of above nature. Okay, that's the marvel.
So talking, Yomi, how it talks so much about their destruction is talking about the breaking of that channel when the temple goes.
Very good, beautiful. Okay, that's correct.
Yeah.
Okay, but now I want to add on what Rav Kashiel says here. So he brings also from the Ramad Vali, Moshe David Vali, the Talmud of the Ramchal. He's a great Kabbalist. So he brings from him, Rav Kashiel, like this. He says Yachin also represents another idea. Yachin means, and he brings from Radak for this, Yachin means preparing. It's future tense, and preparing. And Boaz means in it is strength. Strength in it, right? So he says that they represent preparation for the future. The Beis HaMikdash prepares us for the future. And Boaz represents the way you prepare for the future is you have strong Judaism, strong avodas Hashem, strength in our actions, in our attitudes, in our way we serve Hashem, in the present. And that brings about a future. So there's something representing the future in these two stones, in these two columns, bringing out the future. Now the question is, like, what's the Beis HaMikdash got to do with the future, and why is Shlomo Melech talking about the future? It seems to be in the present, like it was Ish Tachas Kafano of Ish Tachas Teina, so people were there was an amazing present. Klal Yisrael was at its height. We were wealthy, we were safe, all the nations were giving us honor and bringing us wealth and donations, and there was peace in the time of Shlomo, at least for a good while, and that's when he built the Beis Hamikdash. We had no enemies, he was very, very strong and very successful, and the kingdom was successful. So why are you talking about the future? What's the future? Got to do with it. Okay. Answer is because the purpose of the Beis Hamikdash is not just for Am Yisrael; it's for the whole world. It's the tikkun for all the nations, and that's what's going to come out of the Beis Hamikdash and of the Avodas Hashem that Am Yisrael does. If we have oaths, if we have a strong Avodas Hashem, then that's going to bring to the whole world the tikkun for all the nations and all the world. So. So that's why the one who built these things out of brass was Kira, because he was either from the lowest tribes or partly from the lowest tribes, the simple people, and could be he was even a ger, which means he's the one they're making intersect with the rest of the world, because this is about all the brass, and the brass is like the lowest of the. It's not the lowest. It's beautiful. It's golden, but it's simple and it's cheap, relatively. And all these things are made of brass, and these two pillars are made of brass. And all the things on the outside, we're going to get to the other ones also, they're all made of brass. And so brass represents the world. It could represent brazenness, like someone has brazen, metzach nechoshis means his brazen attitude, right?
So
and
also in English.
Oh, brazen, yes, nachon.
Brass or something.
You're brazen, yes, nachon. And so what's happening here is Melachim is preparing the Beis Hamikdash to be the place for the whole world. Beis Tefillah l'kol ha'amim.
And Sukkot. They talk about Sukkot.
By Sukkot, they would come up on Sukkot, all that. You're correct. So that's what's going to happen. It's going to be Beis Hamikdash, the place where it's going to take you to the whole Olam. That's what Shlomo Melech was doing. So that's why Yirmiyahu is especially upset when the Babylonians come in and they destroy the Yachid Boaz. They grind up, take away the copper. They say, you don't understand. This whole thing was for you. We're bringing in idealism to the world. We're bringing in holiness. We're bringing in harmony and love and unity into the whole world. And this is what's going to come out of these structures. And here you are, smashing them up. So that was especially the availus of Yirmiyahu.
Wasn't the gold.
Wasn't the gold. That was the loss of Am Yisrael. But this, what are you guys doing? Okay, you don't understand us. You destroyed us. That's terrible. The more terrible is you destroyed yourselves. Okay, so that's what's going on here with this a little bit. So very, very interesting. These two pillars, and it fits with the Malbim also. The Malbim is saying this is the divine Hanahaga, right? Klal Yisrael are the ones that live above nature, and they bring down the brach blessing into the world of nature, into all the nations. So Yachin, according to the Malbim, means the miracles which are prepared to come into the world. And Boaz is the world of nature, which is going to receive that blessing that comes from above nature. That's the Malbim's explanation. But then Rav Kashel's explaining, I think from David Valley, is that Yachin refers to the future, and Boaz refers to the strength of Avodas Hashem, which Klal Yisrael does, which is going to bring us towards this future of Beis Tefillah l'kol ha'amim, of tikkun to all the nations. So that's the shot over here with the Yachin and Boaz. So that's really fascinating. I got to bring in the picture of it, so it was very beautiful. Okay, let's go further. Questions? Okay, good. Let's further. Now, Pasuk Kaf Gimel. Oh, Pasuk Kaf Beis. Al Rosh Amudim Masi Shoshan, Tito Maleket Amudim. On the top of these pillars was the rose, Shoshan. Shoshana Samakim says a rose.
Okay.
Yeah, Shoshana Bein Chochim. So what's a rose doing up there? I mean, the flowers are nice, but this is like the deepest symbolisms. What's the rose doing on top of the pillars? So the answer is that, again, that's referring to Klal Yisrael. He says that the rose has 6 petals. I'm not sure, does it always have 6 petals? Sometimes it does. And the 6 is all the directions. So the rose faces out to all the nations. That's Am Yisrael. And in Shir Hashirim it says, Anisha Shana Bein Chochim. I am the rose which grows among the thorns. So thorns represents the nations. The rose is Am Yisrael, and they have to like. So again, it's representing this idea of the ultimate goal of the Beis Hamikdash is to bring out kedusha to the whole world. Okay. Now the next part. Vyas esiyam mutzak eser ba'ama misfaso atzfaso. So he made the yam. Now in the outer edge of the courtyard, on the right side was the yam, was a little sea, and the sea of Shlomo, Yam Shel Shlomo, and it was also molded. All these were made with molds. You had these big places where they molded them. Mutzak means it was molded. Eser ba'ame, it was 10 amos from misfaso atzfaso. So it with what's it called again? The diameter was 10 amos from lip to lip. Agul saviv, and it was round. V'chamesh ba'ama komaso.
This is a basin.
A big basin, a big bowl, and it was 5 amos was its height, very big. The kav shloshim ba'ama yasov oso saviv, and you could circle it with 30 amos because 10 across is 3 times that going around, more or less. So 30 amos around is very big. It's like, till those pillars at least.
And one amma is like half a meter.
Amma is it's this like 1.5 feet. Half a meter, more than that.
Maybe less. A foot and a half?
Yeah, 1.5 feet.
A foot is 30 centimeters.
Okay.
So 45 centimeters.
Okay. That's enough.
So it's a bit less than half a meter. But
Oh, okay.
so this is how?
30 meters around. 30 almost around.
So it's 50 meters around. And it's 5 meters from
10 meters across. No, 10 meters across. 10 almost.
10, no, it's 5 meters.
Oh, yeah, I
Less
see.
4.5 meters.
Oh, yeah, okay. So it's big.
Pretty big.
Yeah. Okay. Upakai metachas tisvaso, saviv so vimoso, and it had these ball shapes, like egg shapes, things coming out around the rim, underneath the rim. It was all together. It was all molded together. It wasn't added on. Eser ba'ama, mekifim esayam, 10 amos, surrounding the yam. Saviv shnei turim hapakoim yitzukim b'tzikaso, and 2 rows of these balls molded with it.
Rav Weinberg has a book with all these pictures.
Oh, that's good.
And in his room.
Oh, cool. Oh, I could bring this. Oh, good. I didn't know about that. Omed al shnei aser bakar, shosha ponim safona, shosha ponim yama, shosha ponim negba, shosha ponim mizracha, v'yam aleim milamala v'kol achareim bayisa. So where was the yam standing? It was standing on 12 oxen. Three in each direction,
North.
facing outwards. Right. Va'avyo tefach svaso kamase svas kos perach shoshan alpaim bashachil. Okay, so it was a tefach thick, and it had this. It looked like a kos on the edge, it looked like a cup with like flower-like designs on the edge, and it contained 2,000 bat. That's some kind of a measurement. A lot of water. Vyas esamakona. Okay, stop there for a second. So this is the Yam Shel Shlomo. It's called the Yam Shel Shlomo, and it had inside it water. And they talk all about the Meforshim, what exactly it was used for, whether they actually immersed themselves in it, the Kohanim maybe. Problem is inside already. If they were tamei, so then they had to be tar before they came inside, and this was inside the Chatzer. And so maybe it was an extra immersion. Maybe they washed their hands from it. There, it's not too clear what it was for. Okay, there's different ideas. But it was pure water, and it was maybe it was flowing up from a spring, so it was actually mikveh water. It's not too clear what it was. A lot of discussion. But what does it symbolize? So again, this is brass, right? And it says 12 oxen. The 12 represents the tribes, the 12 tribes of Israel, apparently. I'm not sure. What's the oxen? I'm not positive. There were 12 oxen which carried the the Mishkan, right? So that seems to remind us of that. But basically what it seems to represent is this place of purity, right? In other words, water is purifying, and it's pure. And it's tahor, it takes away from tumah. And so basically that's the idea here, is that it's representing the idea that the mission of the Jewish nation and the Beis Hamikdash is to purify the world from its impurities. That there should become, people become refined, people should become pure in their intentions. And the two big things you saw as you looked at the Beis Hamikdash were the two pillars, Yachin and Boaz, and this big giant pool of water. Okay, then it goes further. Also, another similar idea. So all this is representing our interface with the nations, how we're trying to bring purity to the world. V'yasas ha'machonot, es ha'machonos, eser nechoshes arba ba'ama, orcha machon achatz, v'arba ama, rakba v'shlosh ba'ama kol masah. So then you have these machonot. So these are places where they wash their hands and feet. These stands where they put they call it the laver on it in English, I don't know, the bathing spot, the sink. So there were 10 of them, made of also brass, and they were 4 amos wide, and 4 amos long and wide, and 3 amos high. Okay, that's the stand. Miskarot lahem and miskarot bein hashlavim. While miskarot asher bein hashlavim ariyot. Bakar kruvim val shlavim came mimal mitachas the ariyot. Labakar layos ma'aseh morad. It also had beautiful patterns on it, of lions and of angels and of oxen. These were all like engraved into these these washing basins, or these sink places. Rabbi Fanei Nekoshes Lamachona, Achas Vesarne Nekoshes Varba Pomosav, Tesepos Lahem, Tachas Akior, Sepos Yutchos, Ever Ishtios. Okay, then it also had these wheels in the bottom. They were movable. They had these wheels at the bottom of these big wheels. Okay, anyway, basically, I'm going to just try to say the same idea. Is again, it's more about tahara, which means purification. That's the mission of the Jewish nation, to bring tahara to the world. Like the human being has the Maharal talks about this when he writes about Hanukkah, the difference between the way the Jewish nation and the other nations. The Jewish nation, when Daniel pictured the nations or the kingdoms, he had 4 kingdoms coming out of the sea. He saw a vision, 4 nations coming out as beasts. They look like beasts. Daniel, yeah. And then after that comes a man in the clouds. Okay, so the 4 beasts represent the 4 kingdoms. And the man in the clouds represents Am Yisrael and Mashiach. That looks like a person. That's when Daniel saw the nations. When Nebuchadnezzar saw an image of the nations, he also saw a dream, and it was a big statue, and it had a different representation of all the different 4 kingdoms. He saw like what represented the different aspects of a human being. They were all represented there. The soul and the mind and the body and the power of speech, all that was over there in representing the statue of the nations. But the difference is what the Maharal says, is that Daniel saw a human being, a Tzuras Adam, that behind a divine essence. Like the nations look like beasts because they're not aware of their divine essence, or they're lacking it in some way. And Am Yisrael is very aware of that they have a divine essence. When Nebuchadnezzar saw it, he saw his human form, but he didn't see anything. That was the only divinity he saw, that it has a divine surah, but then he just saw the different aspects of a human being. Sort of like Freud and Marx and all the way they look at people, these drives and these different aspects and intellect and corresponding to different empires. So basically what I want to say is that the job of Am Yisrael is to bring people to the awareness that we all have a Tzelem Elokim. Everyone has like a neshama, a soul. And the way that nations look at a person, they have an image of a humanity, but they don't so much see it as a soul. They don't see like I'll give you an example of this. Like we have a brain, right? So brain is like this fantastic system for processing thoughts, thoughts and feelings and all that kind of stuff, imagination. But there's also a mind. They can't. People think that the brain and the mind are the same thing. They're insane. They're missing the point, because the mind is what comes down from the place of spirituality, and the brain is just like the computer, and the mind is what's programmed the computer. The mind is the thoughts that come from a higher place. They don't come within the brain; they come from a higher place, and that involves moral thoughts, ethical choices, choosing between right and wrong, making choices, being tested, failing tests, passing tests. That's from the mind. Computers don't do that. Compassion, love, all those kind of things, nothing to do with the computer brain. So that's from the mind. So two different things. But people think it's the same thing. They somehow try to find the mind within the brain.
Mind like the soul?
Like the soul, yeah. Yeah, I mean the soul. Another name for the neshama is the seichel in Rabbi Nachman, for example. Like it's divine, so it brings down the divine wisdom is the soul. And so it works especially through the brain. That's true. We talk about the neshama sheba mochi. The neshama comes through my brain, but it's not the brain.
The brain is like a canvas.
The brain is like a canvas or like a computer. But so who's programming it? It doesn't program itself. It's not programmed there to be moral, not to be moral. It's not. That's ridiculous. All those kind of ideas, or to tshuva, or to all the things that a human being has. All the qualities of a human are not mechanical qualities, but they work through mechanical things. Medical system. So that's the job of Am Yisrael, to bring that out into the nations, to show that there is a Tzelem Melachim, that there's purity, that there's tahara, there's idealism that's coming from a higher place. It doesn't come from this. It's not the same as the animals, as the plants, that they're just they're programmed from they're pre-programmed. There's something happening. There's a mind that's active, that's making choices. Yeah.